of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, some of the best of the best of the best. And we are continuing to cover this very troubling story out of the Los Angeles area involving missing 31-year-old Hawaiian resident Hannah Kobayashi. A lot of you know the story by now. She was on a flight from Maui to LAX. She arrives at LAX on November 8th. She is supposed to go on to New York City. She never arrives in New York City, remains in LAX. Her parents go out there. The father is searching. The aunt, the mother, they're all looking for her. 13 days in, the father apparently just can't take the pain anymore, and he unalives himself. Just a crazy twist. And then another twist that we're learning about are some Venmo payments that we are going to dive into. Before we do that, I've teased it before. I'm going to tease it again. Coming to a YouTube channel near you will be Dr. Detective Troy Looney and Doug McGregor with their own shows, and trying to convince Scott Duffy, who's even though he doesn't have doctor in front of his name, he is a professor, and he is very busy at the Wilmington University Criminal Justice Institute. I'm going to try to convince this guy to have his own show, but we are going to create a collective of best guests on the second channel that used to be Best Trials, and it will now be Best Talk in True Crime Talk. It'll be STS True Crime Talk. It's modeled after, sports radio and other platforms, but this will be video and audio, and I'm pumped to have Doug and Dr. Detective Troy Looney will be hosting the first two shows, trying to get Tim Jansen and a lot of the other best guests. So it's going to be a pretty cool endeavor, and we're all going to work together and try to cross promote each other and do it all. So there's a little bit more than just a tease, and feel free to pressure Scott Duffy to join the bandwagon. But I'll tell you this, we've got and by the way, no Scott and Phil this Friday. It is Thanksgiving. We're doing just a special Thanksgiving show tomorrow at noon. It'll be super low key with my crazy kids, my dogs, my wife, and my mom, Carm, and the COE. And we're just going to be talking about what we're giving thanks for and whatever you want to give thanks for as well. But you guys all know Scott and Phil from Friday. This is one half, of course, Scott Duffy. And I always kid with them. Does this story surprise you? Does that story surprise you? Does this free? It's always a no. I've heard it all before. With this one, Scott Duffy's ears perked up a little bit, and I said, hey, why don't you come on the show? And he said, you know what? I am very intrigued by this. So Scott Duffy, what is it about this particular story that has you more, interested as an investigator than, let's say, the garden variety story where someone has chopped somebody's head off, where I try to freak you out and you're not freaked out. So what is it about this that is different?
I am intrigued by this, not surprised, not shocked, but intrigued. And I think I'm more intrigued as I tried to research all the different articles and news reports of what is not being said. So that's where my mind is going. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but key members of the family have quite a bit to say. But we have not heard from the boyfriend that's her traveling companion for at least 6 hours. And so to me, that's a big tell. And so the father, as tragic as that is, horrible. You don't, and I think one of the relatives said they don't want that tragedy to overshadow and take away from the active criminal investigation or I guess police calling this a missing person investigation with regards to Hannah. So I'm intrigued by what is not being said, and so
Yeah.
I have questions. I've written things down. I feel like I could jump on a plane and head there and get into that war room.
Whoa, that's interesting. Do me a favor, ask these guys the questions, not me, because I don't know anything. And by the way, Ned Smith, settled down. Why no? Look at this. Why no Friday? It's Thanksgiving. I'm working tomorrow, and you know what? I'm gonna take a day, and I can't, ask Phil and Scott on a holiday when they're with when they are with their families. So, Ned Smith, you're all hyped up about the STS calendar, which you guys want Phil and Scott and Doug McGregor and Troy Looney to be a part of. We're working on it a step at a time here. So, Scott, something you said intrigued me, which I hadn't heard. You said it was 6 hours before so the boyfriend, real quick, Hannah and the boyfriend were supposed to travel together. Then they break up, but they have this non-refundable ticket. So they decide, well, we're going to go anyway. And he was going to New York too. Reportedly, they didn't sit together. They didn't even talk to each other. And he goes on to New York. So what is the 6 hour time frame? Because I'm not familiar with that.
Well, at least I would say a 5 hour. So I've taken, and as we know, our friend Phil does the frequent Hawaii back to the homeland. But having traveled to Maui, it took me 11 hours from the East Coast. So and the longer part of the travel was from California to Hawaii. So whether it be 5 or 6 hours thereabouts, what and Joel, you said, but I didn't see it anywhere that they didn't sit together. My thought would be, did they break that up at the last time to say, hey, we're no longer an item, so set us apart? Because I imagine when the travel arrangements were made, they were sitting together. Either way, it's I can't imagine that they didn't have some sort of connection. But those are one of my questions. What was their relationship the day of departing Hawaii for California? And then, of course, the second part of their leg. But either way, nothing that I have seen, and maybe there's something that I just haven't caught yet with regards to some sort of interview or words coming out, whether it be through social media, of what the boyfriend had to say. He's got something to say that I think sheds some light that we're not getting a hold of.
Interesting. And he did, as far as we know, he's being cooperative with authorities, at least in New York. Thank you to Sherry Colombe here. These go a long way. I really appreciate it. Super sticker here. Scott, one last question. Someone in the chat said, and I'm curious if your wife has ever said the following words to you: "You are so level-headed and smart." Has your wife ever said that to you?
No.
No, interesting. That's why you do YouTube, man. You get people will say things to you that they would never, that your wife would never say to you. So there you go. Dr. Detective Troy Looney, I'm going to jump to you. I mean, you're as seasoned a detective as it gets. You've worked missing persons, homicide. You're still active in the Akron, Ohio Police Department. Let me ask you, what jumped out to you about this case? Because you also, when I texted you, said, hey, this is a case I really want to talk about. So when you've got investigators interested, I'm curious, what is it about this case?
Yes, thank you. Again, so a couple things stood out. I know the initial comment about the Venmo payments more recently. Again, a lot of speculation, but not knowing what details they actually have. Of course, they have to protect integrity. That's understood. But again, like Scott mentioned, you want to really be involved, and you want to know what particular angles they've approached or what data they've actually searched for. You want to talk to the boyfriend, and I guess there's some missing man and woman essentially that were paid. Who are these people? What kind of surveillance has been uncovered or discovered, and what yet has been not tapped into or identified? So a lot of key areas.
Yeah, we're gonna dive into a lot of them. Doug McGregor, otherwise known as the Geo Profiler, coming to us from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. He uses scientific methods, exactly what it says, geo-profiling, to try to figure out where people are. I asked you this last time, Doug. One of the things, and look, Twitter is an interesting place to gather information, but definitely not always accurate. So I'm seeing all kinds of reports, which I'm reluctant to report on, and I'm not going to mention it specifics of it, but there are reported sightings of her, which seems to always happen in these cases. From your perspective, what do you do with those, geoprofiler?
You got to be very careful with sightings. I mean, some of them, it could obviously be her, and it's law enforcement. I'm sure it's on the list of priorities to look into every single one of those. Usually it's after the fact on surveillance or something like that, or an eyewitness, and they look into those to see if they can confirm that. But sightings, there's lots of people that look like lots of people, and unless you're close to that person, you're not really. If there was a sighting and the witness was a close friend, a family member, a neighbor, that's a sighting that I would take seriously, and I would put kind of at the top of the list. But a member of the public, it's something you want to look into, but you want your investigation to get off in the wrong direction. We saw this with the Brian Laundrie and the Gabby Petito. People were chasing Brian Laundrie all over the country because of sightings, right? And this happens in a lot of cases. So you just gotta look into them, but you don't want to distract and have resources wrongly allocated towards a sighting that wasn't actually the right person.
Yeah. One of the things that continues to baffle me or surprise me or shock me, Scott Duffy, is we had Nako on, who is a former NYPD and LAPD retiree of both agencies, which is rare. But he told us that there's only, in all of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, there's only 3 missing persons detective. Does that surprise you, Scott?
I think not knowing enough about these big metropolitan PDs that I would think it would be bigger. But then some of these PDs really get into the specifics. Like, so for example, you might have missing persons that are not considered one way. Then you may have, a whole kidnapping squad and so forth. So I'd be interested to see of the 3 detectives, are they working just missing persons? And then if it's deemed to be something more, does it quickly jump to another squad? So yeah.
You see her. This is the picture on the right, is obviously her coming off the flight on November 8th. And she was supposed to have a connecting flight. See her wearing those colorful leggings and a hoodie. And then this picture on the left. Scott Duffy. So the family there, it's interesting. There was an LAPD Board of Commissioners meeting where people were kind of zooming in to say, hey, don't stop looking for her. The family has not been happy with the investigation so far, which is a lot of times the case. But police have indicated that they believe she is voluntarily missing despite some really cryptic text. So what do you do with a 31-year-old if the police believe she's voluntarily missing? And by the way, people are asking, how come we're not hearing from police? Is this why?
No, I mean, and Troy can easily lend to this. When a crime, and let's just call this for what, a missing person is a big deal. And any police department's going to take it seriously because they're looking to determine, hey, we want to show that this is not a crime or is a crime, and then give it back to the family if they determine no crime has been committed. Because it's not a crime to disappear. It's not a crime to leave your family to pick up and start a new life as an adult. And so thereby the police have that fine line. But at the same time, families get upset when a crime or a case, and whatever it is, the question that they are seeking is not answered within, a commercial break of an hour-long crime show. This is real life. It's a big city, and there, from what I gather, indications that she is voluntarily leaving LAX, and is there, and then she returns to LAX to start the second leg of her flight. And so it looks like what could have been a long window of a couple of days of her being or falling to some sort of criminal activity. That is it possible that this very, very small window, the short window of her returning to the LAX and then intercepted at some point. So there's a lot that I can easily see where law enforcement is trying to grapple with. Did she leave on her own the second time of LAX, even though there might be some circumstances that some fraudulent activity or whatnot, and then of course these people that are associated with her in one mass transit location or another. So they're looking for enough to say a crime has taken place and now we're full speed ahead to find her. And so this is why missing person cases are difficult, especially when you have what looks to me that she willingly, voluntarily left, and perhaps wasn't even planning on that second leg of a flight. And you'll be able to determine that through, digital media footprints and whatnot to say, she had been planning something long before. This is not a random act of, okay, I missed my flight, let me go and explore the city. So all these things come into play, and I can easily see how the family would be upset.
Look at me. I'm getting yelled at, all caps. Not voluntary. She's having to act to survive. Read up on abductions. I have no doubt, Galen Freeman, that there's something nefarious going on. I'm just telling you what police are saying and what the family's saying. Police are saying. I report, you decide. That's the old tagline that I used to work with. Dr. Detective Troy Looney. Again, very seasoned detective. You just heard Scott Duffy say that he would almost be willing to hop on a flight, jump into that war room. If I call you right now, Dr. Detective, where do you start? You land in LAX. You do.
Okay, so of course, a lot of contention as far as the scene itself. Obviously, LAX. Also, when she left, what kind of transportation was taken, what service, either Uber, what have you. Data trails, data points of communication, right? Of course, that could be a broad reach of, in terms of scope of the data communications, last transmissions from cell phone. You mentioned text messages also. Scott mentioned the digital communications. We all leave the footprints and fingerprints with our devices and technology. And unfortunately, those things take a long time to track and trace. I deliver subpoenas, multiple subpoenas a week, and the data doesn't come back quickly. So we'd love to have it, on a more immediate sense, or expedite the process, but we're kind of on the time frame of the entity we're engaging, right? So whether it's bank transactions, the cell phone communications, the data logs, emails, and so forth, it's just contingent upon when, if things are still retained also, and or can we gain access and how quickly. So a lot of factors there. I'd like to see the text messages. I was looking at several on previous reports, and that's interesting because were those from her, or were they from another source or individual? So a lot of speculation, but without being on the inside, as Scott said, the war room, you don't have all the details, and you have to keep that close to their, purview of information for obvious reasons. The people that, if this is in fact an abduction, they could be watching also. So again, they can change their methods or what have you, or it could be that she wanted to leave, as you mentioned. It could be that she had plans. So but we
And
still
she
have to track.
was, yeah, I mean, to your point, she was spotted on that surveillance video with a person, and allegedly or reportedly does not look like she looks like she's in a precarious situation, and investigators have not released that video, which is interesting to the doctor detective's point. Maybe they're trying to figure out who this guy is, and they want to keep it close to the vest. Just again, sorry, Dr. Detective, I'm just going to ask you to mute yourself, and then
Okay.
um Doug, this is interesting here, and look at this. Mama Bear's from Canada, like Doug. Wouldn't she have come forward when she heard about her dad? You've done a lot of missing persons. Wouldn't you suspect? This is all over the news, all over the media, especially in LA. You'd think that she heard about it, but if she's being held, let's say, beyond her will, or she doesn't have her phone or anything, we'll get to the phone in a minute, and we're getting to the Venmo in a minute too. So hang tight. But what about the fact that there's complete silence after her father is said to have taken his own life?
Yeah, I mean, it may mean something. It may mean nothing. I've read that they were estranged. Now that's all I know with regards to that. No further details have been made public about that, I don't think. So, did she have a good relationship with the father? Did she not? If she has left willingly, whatever her goal is here, does it hurt that goal if she does come forward now that she knows about her father? I have no idea what's going on in her head. But a few points I can make here, and I'm going to be really objective, and not everyone's going to like this. At the moment, publicly, it is just a missing persons investigation with an adult. In terms of what information we know here in this room, there's no signs of endangerment. Publicly, there's no signs of duress. She didn't crash a car and then go missing, for example. So she is a missing adult right now in the public eye. I think if the police thought anything further, they'd probably come forward and make a statement, maybe immediately, maybe eventually. But it's almost one of those cases where you almost want there to be some sign of criminal intent somewhere. And the only reason I say that is we just talked with Scott, and he just mentioned that, the LAPD has 3 persons in their missing persons unit, right? They don't have any analysts looking into all this video surveillance and going through all this data, right? So if there is evidence, if she is seen with somebody who's known to be a criminal in some gang, for example, now you have investigators, detectives, you have organized crime units involved. You might have other agencies, FBI, DEA. You have a whole whack of people now involved in this case that put eyes on. So it can really help. And it's better having that. If she is in that kind of situation, it's better having that evidence than not having it, because there's no point in waiting for that assistance, right? And in a missing persons investigation, every single person she's seen with just explodes. The investigation just grows and grows and grows, because she's seen with one person. Now you have to look into that person, look into all their digital evidence, look into everywhere they've been, all their contacts. She's seen with another person. You have to repeat this whole thing again. So every person that she looks into for 3 missing persons, a unit of 3 people, it gets harder and harder and harder if there is no sign of criminal intent or criminal, underpinnings.
Yeah, and those guys are women. We don't know in that unit, are probably sleeping very little. Thank you for this, Julie Berry. Steve Cohen, if you're listening, Dog the Bounty Hunter's daughter was friends with her in Hawaii. You should have Dog on your show. Get on it, Steve. Steve knows Dog. I know he's dealt with them, so we'll try to get Dog on here. Maybe he knows something that we don't know. Scott Duffy, obviously, your world now revolves around a lot of digital forensic evidence. I mean, a key here is her cell phone. We know she had that because she's been texting. We're going to get into all that, and we're going to get into the Venmo in a minute. But the family says that her phone has now been off since November 11th. Today is November 27th. That would be 16 days, which is 2 weeks and 2 days. That's a long time for a phone to be off. How does this sort of foil the investigation? Because are they able to do anything digital forensics wise with either a dead phone or a phone that's shut off?
Well, the tracking capabilities is probably no longer there. She's already shown, at least from article readings, that she is able to find locations to charge her phone, right? Just about anywhere there is some sort of public accessibility to charging a phone. So, and we've known that she was trying to charge or charging her phone, whether it be in LAX or the bookshop and whatnot. And then for it all of a sudden not to be on, and going. So the tracking ability is probably not there, but then you got to go back, and that of course is all through subpoena work and all these providers that are going to give you the information in order to come up with an analysis. So Doug and the like can do their work. It ultimately will be what's out of place. What's the anomaly? I mean, we all know that we live by our phones. Our phones charge when we're sleeping and so forth. And so they'll be able to figure, okay, is this to us? It seems like an anomaly. Is it to her an anomaly where her phone goes off? The likelihood is probably not, but detectives have to figure that out. And that is through a victimology, right? Victimology is do a complete deep dive into her whole history, the good, the bad, the ugly, and then try to determine, is this something that she was being set up for, that people have been in contact with her, and ultimately this was something that she fell victim to upon her arrival at LAX? Or is it something that was a random act where she is wandering about enjoying maybe a couple of days of sightseeing, and then all of a sudden meets this very random act in a very small time frame, and then she is taken against her will? All these things come into play. Or is she at her wit's end where, hey, I'm taking a left turn from life, whatever it is? These people do things that are outside of our understanding, and it's hard to understand somebody you don't know, especially not from your state. So now they have to get up with Hawaiian detectives to do a whole understanding and an analysis of what has led up to before she entered into California. All those things are very tedious and time consuming. And I can guarantee you that even with just 3 detectives, there are others who are on this, especially with the public, outcry for additional help, that there are things being done to identify who these people are. Are they definitely with her, not just seen with her, right? You got to be able to figure those pieces out and say that's helping me or that's taking me away from an investigation, ultimately to locate her, right? So all these come into play. And like Doug said, and Troy, if you don't have a crime, it is difficult. Like the FBI get resources absolutely could be provided with law enforcement requesting the assistance. But if there's no clear indication or some evidence of an abduction, it makes it more difficult.
Scott, quickly about this, do you know if they can track a digital photo cam, in other words, her camera, which I assume was digital in nature, as they all are these days? Is there a way to track a camera if she had that with her?
Well, I would defer to Doug.
Doug, any way to track a camera?
Really, anything that's anything that has a wireless signal, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, you can track. What you can't track is closed circuit CCTV. You'd have to go in and get that. It's not emitted externally, but anything that has that emits a signal, you can track. I mean, any of us that have even a fridge or a microwave, like if they're hooked up to your Google Home or whatever, that can all be tracked too. So anything can be tracked. And and it's important to keep that in perspective because everybody's thinking about her phone here. The phone is just one item in our lives that we use to connect with the cyber realm, right? It's just one thing. I mean, she has apps that she uses. She has websites she goes on, all these logins. She probably has 100 logins. That's probably at the low end of, and if she doesn't have her phone, is she logging into these from an internet cafe, from somebody else's phone? Are they being logged into? She has debit cards. She has it just a whole slew of digital evidence that can be tracked. And the phone is just one piece of that. It's a good one because we all have it on us, but AirPods, Apple Watch, all these things. What is interesting here and can be a circumstantial piece of evidence to some kind of, I don't know if they could push it as far as criminal activity, but if everything's been shut off, that shows some forensic awareness or it shows death. It's one or the other, right? It's either she's passed away in water and whatever she had on her is dead and she hasn't logged into anything, or somebody has stopped the logging in and usage of all these things. So, but all I know is about her phone.
This is, I mean, there's so many tentacles to this. This person, Mom Bear, again, asking, she had reportedly paid for a $2,000 hotel in New York City. So why not? There's so many connecting flights from LAX to New York City. I mean, I think there's like 50 a day, 50 different flights you can get a day from LAX in some capacity or another to New York City. This is a very sort of tough needle to thread here, but I got to ask it because Dr. Detective, I mean, there's so many people in the chat wondering about the father strictly from an investigative standpoint. Here's a guy that was, some say reportedly estranged from her. The family members say that wasn't the case. He goes to Los Angeles to look for his daughter. He's looking for 13 days. Someone in the chat pointed out that when he was interviewed, he was referring to her in the past tense, which can happen. I did it yesterday because, people slip and I actually believe she's still with us, but the father is no longer here. What do you do with that aspect of the investigation?
Again, so yes, the father, I would definitely look at his history, the data trails or his communications. What was their last relationship communication like? What conversation had they had? How recent or distant was that? We'll talk with the family further. Obviously, more interviews are necessary to try to determine what kind of relationship, if it was estranged, why, any other kind of mental health factors that could be a part of it, any medical histories and so forth. So a lot of different things I know we can speculate on, but I would definitely look at, the father, his lifestyle, in association with Hannah as well. Again, neighbors, family, friends, coworkers, and so forth. And then I would also go back to previous history, not just at the time of the incident or after, but previously before this took place. What kind of communications are there? What kind of emails are there? What kind of maybe journals and so forth? So there's a lot of different trails. But as Doug and Scott mentioned, we have to stay centered on the evidence, where the evidence leads us. It doesn't hurt to still look to work inductively and deductively at everything, essentially. But again, having 3 examiners and a host of other teams potentially that can come on board, everything factors in. So, what was the father dealing with that he felt that was the outcome, unfortunately.
Yeah, a horrific outcome. Tennis girl, this is funny. For me, mowing in case dog is a toll call. I wonder if my kids have ever heard of a collect call. I'm sure they have not. Man, whenever I called someone long distance, my dad had me punch in like 73 digits for a cheaper code. Imagine telling kids about that. I could almost remember it. It's weird, but there was like 100 digits that I had to sit there and memorize. Scott Duffy, here's the thing. In news, it's all about getting a story, turning it around, being on air. That's why everyone in news either smokes, drinks, doing all of these things. You guys are so measured. I'm looking at the three of you. Are you, let me get personal. Are you thinking about this case right now, like when you're driving around wondering, because it's in your blood? And how do you, if you're an investigator on this case, like how do you pace yourself?
Yeah, those are some good questions. In many cases, it's tough to be retired because you always want to be in the middle of it, trying to offer your opinions and then gathering around, hearing other people's opinions. I can guarantee you, detectives, investigators, analysts, they love tossing everything up. And when you don't have cameras on you, you're not doing shows, you're not doing podcasts, you're just like your viewers are chiming in.
Ooh, let's see if he bounces out of this. Look at that. And he's in an agonizing position. Scott Duffy, coming to us from the great Commonwealth of PA. There he goes. Doug McGregor, let's move into the Venmo payments. So police are reportedly looking. Scott, finish your thought because you're back now.
Yeah. I didn't do a direct connect today, Joel, so I apologize.
All good. Go for it.
Yeah, I went on a 3-mile walk with my wife, and we're tossing it around. I'm asking her opinions, and that's what I do in a lot of my cases when I was active. You're asking for people who are outside the realm and saying, "What are your thoughts on this?" So it's tough to let these go. I wish I could be a part of these cases because I want to be an extra added resource for what is probably an inundated caseload for these 3 detectives. My question would be, hey, how many active cases do you have? It's got to be it's high. I can tell you that, especially in a LA County. So now like any other caseloads, when you have a heavy caseload, what drives on the bottom pile to the top? And those are active leads. So they are the detectives actively working active leads. And then if they've exhausted those leads and are now waiting, other cases may drive to the top. And part of what helps drive those things to the top are family members who are saying, I have this, I have that, and please don't stop looking, etc. I can tell you that, I think about these things and many other cases, including cases that I've left to other case agents that I couldn't close out before I retired.
That would drive me crazy. I know that. Back to Mama Bear. A lot of good comments. I'm going to go back to her ex-boyfriend. Did not wait for her in New York. Did he not see her not boarding to New York? Did he not call anyone when he didn't see her? I mean, it makes no sense. They say he's cooperative. Obviously, just talking to these guys, you would think and hope that they have sufficiently ruled him out of any kind of suspicious play here. But Venmo is the big kind of news of the day. So reportedly, 2 Venmo payments were made from Hannah Kobayashi. And so police now are, and you see here, sorry, I'm just getting a call, which I hate when that happens. But Hannah Kobayashi, she Venmo'd to a guy named Jonathan Taylor and then a Veronica Almendarez. 2 payments. The first payment, again, to this Veronica person, it is an unknown amount. And you see there in the description, she's got this bow and arrow emoji. Doug McGregor, if I'm looking at this, I have zero idea what to do. I don't even know how to use Venmo. What do you do with it?
Well, we don't even have Venmo in Canada, so I've never used it, but it's a payment system. I think police should be able to rule it out pretty quickly, in or out. How much it is and who it's to and other receipts and was there a service or whatever it was. I'm sure they'd be able to look into it pretty quickly. I wanted to quickly address one statement I saw in the chat that said, of all the places to go missing, LA is where you don't want to go missing. It's the worst place in the world to go missing. It's actually, if you do go missing, if a loved one goes missing, you want them to go missing in a city. You don't want them to go missing in rural America with a small town sheriff's office and no resources. I mean, there's a lot of great sheriff's offices, don't get me wrong, but if someone goes missing in the middle of nowhere in rural America in a town of 10,000 people, there's no surveillance. There's an agency that may have no experience in abductions, missing persons, all this kind of thing. You have in a town of 10,000 people, you may have 2,000 sex offenders, and the trail goes cold very fast. Just from experience, I can tell you that. And the public doesn't care as much. It's not that they don't care about the case. It's that media coverage of crime in the last 100 years has been dictated by where population lives and where media is. That's just what it is. So yes, if you're going missing in LA, you have a fantastic agency with lots of resources, lots of surveillance, lots of people in the media that are keeping it, at the forefront. So it's not good to go missing anywhere. We don't want that to happen to anybody we love, but in my opinion, it's at least you have those resources that are available.
Yeah. By the way, STS is staying on this story, and you can let everybody know that. And if there's breaking news over the weekend, whether I have a tryptophan hangover or not, I will make sure to get on if there's breaking news with this. From He's a Doll, and he looks like a doll. Joel, your voice is like velvet. Thank you. Not quite as soothing as Scott, but to you, Dr. Detective, how can the boyfriends be involved when he was on the connecting flight? Theories, please, boys. What would you say to that? How could the boyfriend be connected?
Okay, again, so the boyfriend being the last person of contact that we can access immediately, right? That's our starting point. Obviously, interviewing or being interviewed, or maybe asking additional questions, right? What was the reason for their breakup, or was there any other conflict? Why did they not sit together? Also going back to this actual dream job that was she was looking for or heading to. What's the communication with that source, right? So was the boyfriend familiar? Did he make the connection or a referral? Is there an ex-boyfriend involved? Were they meeting at this hotel allegedly for the shoot or what, or just to travel together as far as boyfriend and or job party? So a lot of things there. Of course, the last person you're in contact with always comes into play. Speaking to the Venmo factor, again, we deal with Venmo a lot of payment systems, and there's an active trail there. So yeah, like Doug said, you can track and trace that pretty quickly if they respond pretty quickly. Also, the trail from that, like being
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, doctor, but when you say they respond, you meaning the company, Venmo?
Venmo, yes. The entity or company, yes. I'm sorry. So yeah,
Okay.
Whether it's cell phone or payment system or log files, whatever, what have you, servers and so forth, for email or whatever the communications are. When that entity responds, they all work on different capacities of response time, different methods of how they're delivering the content back, how quickly they actually get to it. Obviously, this would take precedence with the attention and We could even call this an exigency, or maybe approach in that context, exigent circumstances to fast track the communications. And this is where we get into leveraging our federal partners also, like Scott and Doug. We leverage our federal partners to have a broader reach into the communications. And let's face it, some of the entities respect the federal partners in greater context, right? They'll tell us, okay, the Secret Service is involved, the FBI is involved, even if we just use them as a task force element to leverage that to get to the information faster. So it does make a difference. But again, back to the boyfriend, I would go back to, you can never ask too many questions of that boyfriend and or family, friends, because different things come to mind different times.
Yeah. I thought that's super interesting. And for, police to admit that, you could have one train of thought one day, another train of thought the other day. So you want to follow back up. Great point here from Sonny. By the way, McSpunky just gave us a super chat saying happy Thanksgiving, STS family right there. But Scott, I wanted to ask you about the Venmo, Scott, but what's your best guess? As this is Los Angeles. The Menendez brothers just had a hearing where I was so happy to hear they had technical difficulties just like us. The world was watching and they couldn't get Lyle and Eric on Zoom, something that might happen to STS, but I took a sick, twisted pleasure in that. But point is, big press conference. Anytime something happens in LA, you got a press conference. Why no press conference here, Scott Duffy?
Good question. It would be a good question for the family to ask LA, and LA might have already given the family a very good answer. So they could be hot on the trail of something. It's also very possible that they have information that we're all wrong, right? With regards to this is going down a criminal element and so forth, and so thereby no news conference. It could also be because it's LA, and it like piggybacking on what Troy was talking about. There, even within the federal agency, if I feel like I have an exigent circumstance, it's my case, I'm on it. And then when you call a provider of whatever information you're looking for, remember they may be a single point where there's 1,000 exigent circumstances. And so you have to accept that. And in law enforcement, you do realize that, especially after, oh, okay, you're not getting to my request immediately. I get it. And then I would even call people within my agency to say, I'm not getting what I want at the time that I need it. And then they'll leverage their relationships, especially in our CAST unit. So it's a big world. And you realize that when you're sending subpoenas out, trying to get the information that before you can make that next step, and you realize you're 1001 waiting in line.
By the way, the technical definition: an exigent circumstance is an emergency situation that justifies law enforcement entering a location without a warrant. That is the definition of an exigent circumstance. Thank you so much to Wendy Woobles. I really hope that's your real last name because I love it. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Appreciate it very much. And hopefully we all have a lot to be thankful for this Thanksgiving. Scott, by the way, I don't really care what you think, but what did your wife say on this 3.5 mile walk? She's probably right. What's her theory?
Yeah, she, we can talk openly, right? When you don't have cameras and recording devices and you're pointing fingers, and I guarantee you law enforcement is doing the same thing. You're often saying he, she, this, that, and then you see if the evidence takes you there. We have lots of theories, and then you have to dwindle it down and say, what's a working theory? Where's that evidence taking us? She's very good at the people aspects, the family, the boyfriend. And I saw in here with regards to The boyfriend made his flight. Did he? I don't know.
Yeah,
And
he
then,
did. He did.
okay. And then I saw something about, well, did Hannah miss her flight? Did she miss her flight, or did she willingly not take that flight? How is it possible that some could make it from the plane and the others not? Was there a bathroom break? Was there something else? Or was it, that ultimately comes down to, and that question may be answered, was this a voluntary stop? Like, you know what? This is a bucket list, as I think I saw in her own notes. This is a bucket list trip. And so thereby, LA, beautiful city. It's, amongst many other things. And so thereby, you know what? Since I'm not with the boyfriend right now, I'm going to do a little bit of tourism. And so is that all part of the play, or is it not? Those are tough questions to get answered, because you don't have Anna to ask those and answer those questions. So that's where my questions lie. And I think my wife and I are asking, for example, as a father and father of a daughter who I would do anything for, my questions in the victimology would be, what is that relationship between father and daughter? And these are behind scenes, closed doors. It's not going to be public information, because you want, in a victimology, the good, the bad, the ugly. What is her mental status? What she's 30, 31 years old. That's a long lived life. And so thereby there's a lot to go through. Did something happen in the last week, a month, 6 months, years? All those things that detectives are throwing around to try to say, can we answer one question and move on to the next? It's a lot to unpack in a missing person case.
Yeah. By the way, if you appreciate the show, please hit the like button. You can subscribe. We've got a Patreon page. Helps us put on this amazing content. COE, shout out to her. Her home of origin is Los Angeles, as is Space Coast, and 2 of my kids were born there. She is officially off the LAPD missing persons list. I just looked. Doug McGregor. What does that mean? Thank you to Best Nancy, who wants Fred on the cover of the STS calendar. That's my pug. But what does this mean if she is in fact officially off the missing persons list?
It means she's either been promoted to another list or demoted. It either means something negative has happened. They found a body, they're IDing the body, or it's been pushed into a criminal investigation, or it could be, as Scott mentioned at the very beginning, she's a grown adult. She's allowed to go missing. Could be something as simple as she contacted LAPD and proved it was her, and she's doing her own thing. And then that's it. They can't tell the family where she is. You're not allowed to. Every time I work a missing persons investigation for a family.
Wait, back. I'm sorry, back that up. So if the police know where she is and she doesn't want to be seen or found, she can ask police to not let her family know. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Because we don't know why she went missing. She might have gone missing for, I don't want to accuse a family of anything, but it could be something within the family, a dynamic, and she doesn't want them to know where she is. Right. And so she just says, yep, I'm well. This is me proving it's me. And I don't want my family to know. Now, LAPD may make a statement just so the public doesn't keep going that says we've been in contact with Hannah and she's fine. That they may do that. But yeah, she's allowed to go missing. And that's something whenever I work a case like this for a family, I always let them know that if I find this individual and they don't want you to know, that I can't tell you. So that's the reality of these type of cases. And if you're an adult, like Scott said, you're allowed to go missing for any reason you like.
Yeah. That never crossed my mind. Joe, yeah, hop in, Scott.
Piggyback on that very thing. So, 28 years working both uniform and in the FBI. Only one time did I actually come across, just through a random car stop, a individual that happened to be missing from the Midwest. And there he is, alive, well, on his own. And he told me, I was wondering if my family would put me in, and I do not want to go home. I do not want to be a part of that family. And how do I get out of NCIC? And then that's a very tough time, a moment to where you have to figure out. And so thereby just comes through, hey, how do I bridge the gap? I need to show to law enforcement they need to remove you from NCIC as wanted. You're a wanted person when you're a missing, endangered person and you're put in NCIC. That's why law enforcement, they have to cover all these stops or these steps to put somebody in, because when law enforcement comes across that missing person, they're detaining them, they're stopping them, they're conducting an investigation. And there's a lot to go there. And ultimately it came down to, hey, I'm not going to tell your family if you don't want me to tell them anything. And he said, no, do not give them any indication of where I'm at, but you can tell them that I'm alive and well. And that's what it took. So I communicated that to the NCIC entry department. That is the department that was responsible for putting that person into NCIC as missing. And then ultimately give them enough, hey, I have this individual. They are not missing, and they're not endangered, and so thereby have them removed. And that's what happens. Is it rare? I couldn't tell you that, but that was one time in my career, and so be it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Now we've got conflicting reports from Kay. She is still on the list. I'm looking at it now. So, by the way, someone just made the comment, and I just checked. Sean Diddy Combs has, in fact, been denied bail for a third time. It's not going to be a very happy Thanksgiving for that guy. I can tell you that. Kelly Mack, I'll tell you this. Every time I've got these guests on, any of the guests, I learn a lot. So I do agree with you, even though it is my show, that it is informative, not because of me, but because of the best guests. There is this photography job that she was believed to have been offered in New York City, which she was super excited about, which a lot of people think was a ruse. Look at this from the COE putting this up. These are bucket list New York City items in her handwriting. This is interesting. Dr. Detective Troy Looney, you see here, 9/11 Memorial Museum, 1 to 3 hours. Z's Perfect Walking Tour, which I've never heard of. The Museum of Natural History, which I've heard of. I dragged my kids there. All Day at Central Park, which I've been there. And on it goes. But Dr. Detective, this does not seem like a woman who was not interested in continuing on to New York. So much of this just doesn't make sense. With these notes here, I look at them, I just read them. What do you do when you see these notes?
Again, so I'm looking at the various scheduled times, how long she wanted to spend there, what was next up on the list. The dates also, it shows clearly 11/9, 11/10, 11/11, even 11/16 at the very top, and a couple other notations there. So yeah, she definitely had plans to meet with people. Obviously, time for food. Maybe she wanted New York pizza. It looks like also, and yeah, a lot of different plans of action in the work. So again, everything stands out. So you also have to check each one of these places, right? For surveillance, for witnesses, for potential leads, or any evidence that could potentially help.
Even though she never made it there, you're still going to look at stuff. Is that it?
Well, again, that's as far as we know. She has never made it there right now by the flights or by the information. Could it have been a ride with someone? Maybe she paid these people to give her a ride there. Of course, I'm speculating, but again, everything's in play always, right? So anything you have from the victim or from the person or individual, you're going to vet that. So you're going to make sure and ensure that up as a lead to see, is it credible? Is it something we need to consider? Even if it's just contacting the local agency and having them go out to say, hey, can you make contact with these parties, see if this person's been cited or what have you. So if those are some of the reported sightings, we definitely have to still follow up on that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's something as simple as she was given this dream job in New York. She's a photographer. It was for some DJ, and then she gets a text message on the flight saying, you know, we're not doing it, and she's just absolutely dejected, and just spirals from there. There's a million different. Steve Cohen says there's a million ways to get it, even though he's not the original guy to say that.
Correct.
Doug McGregor. The second Venmo payment is to a guy named Jonathan Taylor. It's also an undisclosed amount, and the description underneath says for a reading, which people, I guess, have interpreted to be a tarot card reading. My question is, if you're working this case actively, I assume you're tracking these people down, this Jonathan Taylor and Veronica Almendarez. And what are you asking them once you get a hold of them?
Sure. I'm tracking them down. I'm having my the private investigators I work with do that and interview them. A Jonathan Taylor in Los Angeles, there's probably thousands of them. The other name is probably easier to track down. And there's probably less Veronica. I can't remember her last name.
Yeah.
So yeah, tracking them down and discussing with them. But I mean, really, you're leaving. I mean, the law enforcement's going to do that, and they're going to do it faster, and they're going to have access to the digital evidence. So it's much easier for them to do that. I mean, if a family hires private investigators, they will obviously look into all those leads as well. And and that can be very beneficial to the family on their end doing their own investigation. But me personally, I would identify it as obviously something that has to be looked into, and then I would wait for the information, for the data.
Scott Duffy. So the aunt here, whose name is Laurie Pigeon, she was just quoted, and this was 15 days in, that they're still focused on downtown LA. But then they're interviewed later on, and she says, we're now also encouraging people from across the nation to keep an eye in case she's been taken outside of California. I know you don't know the answer, but what does your gut tell you? Is it that she's still in the greater Los Angeles area, or do you think she's moved to a much wider radius, and could be in Iowa for all we know?
Yeah, you keep an open mind and you go with what your last known place is, and then try to dedicate resources to that. So yeah, you got to keep an open mind that she's traveled willingly or unwillingly. The fact that she's still with us and with somebody, and she's traveled by other means, car, train, things like that. So you're absolutely open that if all of a sudden things start popping up that she's outside the state of California, you just hope that it's more than just a sighting, because sightings just are not good. They're unless you can corroborate somebody saying, I saw her here or there. And hopefully, as Doug mentioned earlier, whatever, if she's still doing Venmo, is there another Venmo payment somewhere, or anything to indicate that, okay, she's now here. So now we can get a whole nother law enforcement agency involved and start doing their due diligence to determine whether that's a good or a bad lead. So until something says she's outside of California, California is where she's at.
This is interesting. I had not heard this. There was just a comment from Sunshine, Dr. Detective, that the boyfriend, and I'm just going off of this comment. I have not gotten confirmation of this, that he has a mugshot out of the state of Texas. If this is in fact true, and that's a big if, but I'm going to take Sunshine's word for it right now. How does that, I don't know, up the ante in terms of your investigation of the boyfriend, if he does in fact, and I'm again saying we do not have confirmation, but if he is in fact a convicted felon, has a mugshot, how does that up the ante for your investigation in regards to the boyfriend?
Again, so does it up the ante? It's an interesting piece, right? It'd be an interesting point of information to discover, right? Of course, every agency works in a different capacity, right? And every detective works a little bit different. But from my perspective, I would just approach it like I would any other case, like the victimology first, family, friends, relatives, coworkers, boyfriend specifically, because specifically because he's the last person she was with, or at least close to. And having a mugshot as part of the, I guess, profile we will build for that individual, it will be determined what was that for. Were there previous arrests? Were there previous reports of conflict or any kind of arguments? Pretty much, who are we dealing with? Who was she dealing with? Even past, present, or potential future with this job, or potential other friends or people of interest that could come to into play or factor in to the process. So I would look at everything: his social media, his communications, his friends, his relatives, and so forth, not just his a mugshot. So it's a piece of evidence or a potential lead to look into. And again, as I said, vet the information, look at what the cause is, if it's credible. Even it could be something that's photoshopped, or it could just be from much further in the past or something more recent. So just contingent on what we find along the way.
I'm realizing from this conversation, I never ever could have been an investigator. I'm way too like ADHD and all over the place. COE would be really good because COE has like a steel trap for a brain. She can recall things. It's very, very meticulous. I can say a credit card number, and she knows it by heart instantaneously for life. Sometimes uses it 5-6 years down the road when I've forgotten that she knows credit card number. Anyway, I digress. But the timeline. This is obviously super important. Doug McGregor. Again, she lands, and these guys are awesome. So I'm going to keep going a little while longer. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. We can all chill out. For those of you in Ireland or wherever else you are, it's not Thanksgiving, but you can chill out too. I give you permission because all of us Americans. By the way, I read that about 40% of Americans, if not more, are still carrying weight on them from last Thanksgiving. So maybe have a few less bites this year. Jonathan Taylor lives in Texas and was scammed via Venmo. This is one of the Venmo people. He is paralyzed and lives in a group home. He called his local police and asked them if they were familiar with Hannah's case. They were not. This is interesting, Doug. What do you make of this? That this guy actually lives in Texas and he was scammed via Venmo. Does that mean that someone is pretending to be Hannah and is doing untoward things with her Venmo account?
Yeah, it could be. I'd be interested to see the activity coming out of her Venmo account. So I don't know what it's like in every different area in the States right now, but up in Canada, there's a big thing with phone numbers are getting hijacked left, right, and center. So I get people calling me, I don't know, once a month, and they're saying, you just called me asking for money. So, scammers are hijacking phone numbers that are active, calling people, then they call back and it's you. Right. So that happens all the time here now. I've had that happen to me 3 times at least. Other things are, I'm getting scams all the time from payments, different like Venmo, those kind of things all the time. PayPal is sending me saying, oh, you owe this person money. I get one from PayPal daily saying I owe somebody money. So what I would want to know is, is her account being hijacked? But also, is this person in Texas also telling the truth? Are they just jumping into this investigation? I'm not saying they are, but that happens all the time, that people jump into investigations, as the other two can probably attest to. So I mean, you'd have to look into it on the digital side from her accounts, but also to see if this person is legit and who they say they are.
Scott Duffy, this question caught my attention from Egg. do you actually see the missing person to confirm that they're not in danger? In other words, let's say Scott Duffy, hypothetically, she calls the LAPD and, verifies her birthday, social security, whatever it is, and says, I'm fine. Is there an obligation from law enforcement to, at 31 years old, for them to go out, find her, and make sure that she's not being forced to call in?
Yeah, so for law enforcement to put anybody in NCIC, whatever capacity, they have a checklist, probable cause, etc. And they would have to meet that same checklist to remove somebody. So, for example, let's just take it out of the person in a stolen car. Somebody reports a stolen car, police put it in. Yes, okay, you've met, all the questions are asked. And so thereby we're putting that car in. And then that car is recovered somewhere else. So the same way law enforcement has to, let's just say it's outside the jurisdiction of where it was first reported. Law enforcement has got to communicate to that police department that put it in, because they're the only ones that can remove it. Hey, this car is sitting on our lot, whatever, we've recovered it, and we're going to send you an official report. So remove that. So the same way in a person, they're not just going to take somebody who's called, who could be defrauding and so forth. So they're going to want to say to communicate, hey, you're going to remain in the system, and you may not want to be in touch with your family, but in order for us to do that, you're going to have to go to whatever department that is in your jurisdiction so we can communicate officially. That's typically the way I see that happening.
And Joel, if I can add something to that really quickly, especially with AI now, you have to go in person, because even over video, the voice, the face, everything can be masked. So AI has made that a lot more complicated too.
By the way, tech continuing to ruin all of our lives. We're now all addicted, and now we don't know what's real and what's fake. So I might file a class action lawsuit against Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and whoever else I can muster up. But I have a feeling they've got a lot of money for attorneys. Just a hunch of mine. Troy, this is a great question. The Venmo recipients, the ex-boyfriend, give us an example of kind of the line of questioning, going into detective mode. What are you asking?
Excellent question, by the way. Thank you. So I was thinking about that before the question was posed. Looking at, Scott and Doug both said, looking at Jonathan Taylor, looking at Hannah's Venmo, looking at if the ex-boyfriend has a Venmo account, we get a lot of scams where, the victims, we have layers of victims essentially. So what that means is, we're going to subpoena the records for everyone. We're going to look to see if they have reports of being scammed or has their information been compromised on the dark web. Because Jonathan Taylor could be a victim if this is in fact true. The person in Texas mentioned, this person is disabled. Someone who has access to his information could be using that. So again, you're going to request the certified information from the entity such as Venmo, right? And you're going to look at potentially, are there home health aides or their relatives or other people of interest that could be using that name, or is someone posing as Hannah as it shows, right? So the good thing about data, the gift and curse about technology and the data is it leaves a trail. It's just not always easy to find. And as Doug mentioned, it's not just the cell phone. There's so many data points. Sometimes it takes a higher level of forensics, not just with the Celebrite and other tools, but with the ethical hacking elements, networking, tracking the log files and everything else. So that all factors in, and not just with the Venmo or cell phone entities or subscribers or providers, but everything. So again, I would look at, does the boyfriend have a Venmo account? Has there been reports of him being scammed or any other conflict? So it all factors in. Excellent question, by the way, because the receipts allow us to follow the money, follow the transactions, and maybe lease other potential people of interest if this is in fact that type of case, right? Yeah. So I've made arrests in other similar cases where there was a victim initially that was scammed, and it led to another suspect of a suspect or associate of a suspect that was mentioned initially. So we can't just go out and arrest the first person we see or name that we see, but we have to still follow that trail.
it's amazing to me how meticulous these guys are. Scott Duffy, I'm I know you, and you're like a investigative junkie. So give me a number. Like if you were called in right now, how many hours a day would you be working this case before you'd say, I need to get some shut eye?
Yeah. So, again, is this a missing person case where you don't have any evidence of a crime being committed? That would also be determinant. Yes, I would be meeting with the family, talking with the family, anybody that's going to give me information. There's a lot of questions to be asked in a victimology report, and ultimately you're going to ask the same questions of everybody that you think can contribute. You're looking for her, and police are looking to see if a crime has been committed, because ultimately that's what police get involved. The fact that a crime, as opposed to, hey, we don't have anything that says she has fallen to foul play. She's not a victim. She may be a victim of a scam. She may be a victim of fraud. You may have two crimes where there is something that took place of a violent nature, an abduction, that is totally separate of a fraud case. So all these things that come into play, ultimately, if I am the case, if my local department in Delaware said, hey, Scott, we need your assistance, and can you leverage some federal resources in here, I would be contributing as much as I can, saying, what do we think took place? And then what do we know took place? If I feel like she is endangered, absolutely. I'm on the phone trying to get all those providers of information that to say, get this information to our detectives, and in that war room with them to say, okay, what are we thinking next to find her? That's what's happening, especially as we come to a Thanksgiving holiday. We know that the people who may be having information of all Venmo, cell phones, etc., they go on breaks. They're off, and you'll have a skeletal crew. So you're trying to get everything possible to continue that fight, because you're dealing with family members that are saying, find my loved one, find my loved one. And if you have evidence that shows there is somebody that took her against her will, then yeah, you're not getting much sleep. You're doing everything in your power to see if you can save somebody and ultimately find her. So there's a lot going on in play, because it's still a missing person, at least for our purposes. From what we know from LA, it's a missing person case. It's tough.
Yeah. This is a text message between this is from the sister, Sydney Kobayashi, who gave this information. I got hacked by who, stripped of my identity, I can't fly. There are a lot of weird messages kind of going back and forth. I just want to kind of run through the timeline quickly, because it's important. This is Terminal 3, and you see Terminal 4, Tom Bradley International Airport. By the way, we can ask the guests about this too. There's apparently a big human trafficking issue around the LAX area, with warnings all through the airport. But so just very quickly, she lands in LA on the 11th. She's supposed to have a connecting to flight to New York City 42 minutes later, or roughly 11 p.m., but she never makes it on. They believe she spends the evening of November 8th at LAX. November 9th, she's spotted at this Tashkent bookstore, which is like a picture book for coffee tables, very high end. She's in that store. She's taking pictures. She asked to have her phone charged. The next day, She's seen in the background of a YouTube video at some kind of event with LeBron James. November 11th, I believe, is the actual last official sighting, where she's seen at a Pico metro station. I lived in LA. I didn't even know they had this kind of metro transit system within the city, but apparently they do. I thought it was a bus, but it's like a train. She's texting here, Troy. She's texting things like, "I don't feel safe." Then she's texting, "Deep hackers wiped my identity, stole all of my funds, and have had me on a mind F since Friday. I got tricked pretty much into giving away all my funds for someone I thought that I loved." I mean, this is really disturbing. And then on this day, November 11th, she apparently returns to LAX. This is a mystery in the true sense of the word. I just can't put it together. And then how do you, as an investigator, not get constantly tripped up? Like, you come across these text messages where she says she's been tricked. What do you do now?
Okay, so my first thing would be I'd make an immediate phone call, right? I'd say, or get to a location where you can actually talk to me, right? And I'd ask questions like, is this typically how she would text you? Does this sound like something she would say, right? To verify or, determine.
Which, by the way, they say it does not sound like her. She used to,
Okay.
She would use a lot of emojis. She never did that. They said the language did not fit her persona.
Right. So that's, not even knowing that, but thank you for adding that component. That's what stands out to me. This doesn't sound like someone that's in distress or even someone that's readily even upset to that point to text it. I would make a phone call and I would say, hey, send me money. I can't, I need funds to travel, or I need to make arrangements to have you meet with me or pick me up or go to a safe spot or safe place. Again, so that definitely stood out, just looking at the text messages and, dealing with a lot of fraud victims, I would ask the kind of questions, hey, is there anything else you need to tell us, like from the sister to her? Anything you want to share? Like, now's the time, it's important. You're in a busy city. What can you tell me about this job? Tell me more about the job. Or I'd ask the sister, did she tell you more about the job? So a lot of times, a lot of things that come to mind are we asking the right questions to the family, right? The family doesn't always know what to share with us because we just haven't asked. Nothing against investigators, but we have to be meticulous and inquisitive. And I think the thing about, having all this experience, we're trained to assess a situation in seconds and determine or make a reaction initially, maybe with an interaction with an individual or some kind of conflict, essentially. But as you do that for decades, it becomes readily apparent this is a little odd. These text messages were odd. That's what stood out to me.
By the way, this is the best community. You see it behind me. Best guest, better community. If you guys get any tips that are substantiated or corroborated, please send them my way. survivingthesurvivor@gmail. Any possible sightings, anything that you're seeing, because I know you guys are looking at a lot more than I am looking at. I'd really love for you guys to keep me in the loop. survivingthesurvivor@gmail. A couple more minutes. The fastest 90 minutes of your life is about to be up in a few, but we can keep going because I love these guests. Doug, someone was asking about Find My iPhone. Is it still accessible? They said it was, even if the phone is off. Is it true if it's dead too? Does it still work?
Yes and no. If it's completely dead, then no. If it's completely dead, if it's been destroyed, then no. But it also only works if it's been allowed on that device, right? So my wife and I have Find My phone, but if she goes on her device and turns it off, then I can't find her phone, right? It's up to her. It's up to that person. So if Hannah turns it off, or whoever has access to her phone turns it off, then the Find My phone isn't going to work. And that goes for, other devices too, whether, AirTags and that kind of thing. So yeah, it has to be, you have to have, both sides have to be part of that relationship. So, yeah.
I mean, the one thing you can't do, Scott Duffy, is give up hope. So just rounding out this timeline, then we'll get some final thoughts here. November 12th, the family files a missing person report, even though she hadn't been really seen for a few days at that point. November 14th, there's another set of text messages, Scott, and this is important, that come in. This is according to the aunt. She texts family saying, "I just finished a very intense spiritual awakening." And then she texts again, apologizing for quote unquote craziness, later adding that it was definitely intercepted. I mean, this you can't make this stuff up. November 15th, LAPD finally makes this is a week later, they make a missing persons flyer. Again, she was last seen, I believe, at the airport on the 11th. Now on November 17th, the family gets surveillance video. That was her coming off the plane on the right there. You see the missing poster. But what about these texts, Scott Duffy, about this spiritual awakening and being intercepted? What do you do with that?
Yeah, very much like the texts of funds, right? I've worked a lot of fraud cases. Funds is a big it's a red flag that just says delete that thing. And so the 14th to 15th. So this is where timelines are important, because was her phone not turned off, or at least believed to have been turned off, somewhere around the 12th, or is it the 14th, 15th? And this is where ultimately, I think, as you dig through a victimology and realize, what has she been going through? Is this an anomaly? Is she, what's her religion? What's her beliefs? What's her, what's happening with her leading up to this flight and this trip? And if this is all an anomaly and everybody is shocked by it, and law enforcement are asking the questions, when's the last time you've had a conversation with her? And somebody says just before she left, and this and that, you have to then judge the credibility of all these people who are providing you information. If somebody says, oh, she would never say anything like that, well, show me those texts that you've had so I can get an idea myself of what the conversations, what the language she uses. All these things are important. Are there indications that this is a fraud? Absolutely. Are there indications that somebody else has control of her phone? Sure. There are very strong indications. But until law enforcement is able to say, okay, we believe this over that, it's just something else that leads them one way or another. This is where those texts are disturbing, right? Because it's not something I would do. It's not something anybody I know would send to me. But I don't know her, and I don't know what she's been going through. And that's what it would take a good investigator to figure those things out, to say this is something unlike her, as opposed to there's evidence something was cooking. And again, you're at a fork in the road. What is this?
Speaking of these best guests, you're looking at them right here. Great investigators. They are right here. Final thoughts, by the way, in light of what is being reported about the father, if anyone is having trouble, and by the way, holidays are a particularly difficult time for a lot of people. There is a number, 800-273-TALK, 800-273-TALK. That's obviously only here in America. I doubt it works in Canada either, but 800-273-TALK is the number. He is known as the geo-profiler. He does linkage analysis. He finds people who are missing. He joined us just the other day. Doug's going to have a new show on the second channel coming out very soon, along with Dr. Detective Troy Looney. They're each separately hosting, and you can bug Scott Duffy to do the same. I've done it enough already. But Doug McGregor, this is a really, really perplexing case. I'm just naturally curious, which is why I think I became a reporter. I don't think my mom is that on top of this. I'm going to have her read about it. She will definitely have theories, and we'll share them tomorrow. Thanksgiving special tomorrow at noon. I'm just going to leave it wide open for you, Doug McGregor. Your final thoughts here.
Final thoughts is there's something in terms of a missing persons case. There's something that's extra that's going on here. And the reason I say that is because 8 or 9 out of 10 missing persons are found within the first 24 hours. That's why, you look at the list and that LAPD has. I haven't looked at the list. And I'm not sure how many they have on there, but the number of calls they get for missing persons is probably 10 times that. But they don't add them all to the list. And these agents, these law enforcement agents, if they have 3 people dedicated to this unit, they have to go through everybody that's on the list, plus all those other calls that they get that are found in the first 24 hours. And those are your typical missing persons cases. Oh, so-and-so was supposed to be back, but they decided to go to dinner with a friend and then go to the gym, and okay, now they're back, right? That's your typical missing persons case. So this is atypical. In the same breath, and the last thing I'll leave it with is, there are extenuating circumstances. There are cases of cults and trafficking, but, in most cases, Occam's razor applies. The simplest answer is usually the right answer. And that doesn't mean you don't go looking into leads and stuff, but I don't go looking into all these different avenues and leads until there's evidence, facts pointing in that direction, or you're just wasting time and resources. And that's really, really important.
That last part is very important. Blackwoodor, one of our faves, coming to us from the Republic of Ireland. I'm going to get yelled at because I just said one. Nikki Cuds, coming to us from the great state of New Jersey. So excited for a new show, another channel. There you go, Nikki. It's going to be endless content for you. Dr. Detective Troy Looney. I think there's probably only one in the. Do you know of any other Dr. Detectives, Troy?
All I can think of is Alex Cross or Sherlock Holmes.
So this is the new Sherlock Holmes of 2024. But Dr. Detective, same to you. I'm just going to leave it totally open-ended. What's your gut tell you about this and your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you again. So I'm going to piggyback off of what Doug said. So yeah, don't want to give the perception of we're just going to look at every piece of evidence that could be a potential goose chase. I don't want to call it that, for lack of a better term, but you do have to allow the evidence to lead you where with what you have, and what really can be identified and or vetted in terms of proved or disproved. Again, a lot of unanswered questions, right? There's the issue of the text messages, issues of the Venmo, or questions that come to mind, not issues, but questions that come to mind with the Venmo, with the text messages, the cell tower communications, the phone being not active currently, the boyfriend. So a lot of things that we readily won't know because we're not actively sitting at the table with them and bouncing things back and forth, talking with the family directly, and so forth. So hopefully best outcome is she's found, or she just wanted a break and wanted to get away for a moment, and she comes forward and say, I'm okay. Best case scenario. Otherwise, they'll continue to work, I'm sure, hard. They've, I'm sure, reached out to multiple entities to get evidence, subpoena, surveillance, and so forth. And there's still a host of other potential new pieces of evidence that could come forward to find her, locate her. So that's the best solution or best outcome we can have for her to be found safe.
Let's hope so. C. Taylor, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I'm thankful for this great channel. Thank you so much. Please, I'd be thankful and grateful if you could just share STS with other people. It's like the Brady Bunch. You keep multiplying. So let them know, because we're putting in a lot of hard work here. What can I say about this next guy? What does this say? On a lighter note, this is from COE. The STS Nation reached a goal. We'll make an STS calendar. Get your nominations ready. We'll post details on the community tab. we're going to do it. We're going to have an STS, the Men of STS calendar. I guess technically we should have women, but screw it. We'll do a first one that's just all guys. Scott Duffy will just be wearing an FBI patch. I don't know where, but that's it. Just an FBI patch. His wife does not know about this. She may find out. She does periodically listen to the show. And I'd actually like to get her as a best guest on this story because I bet she's got, in some ways, better instincts than Scott Duffy. But for those who do not know Scott Duffy, he's a regular on Fridays. He is a retired FBI special agent, a police officer before that, and the director of the Criminal Justice Institute at the University of Wilmington or Wilmington. Is it Wilmington? Wilmington, it says it right on the screen. Wilmington University Criminal Justice Institute, right there on the screen. Scott, I know you're shy, but you'll be more than happy to oblige in the STS calendar. You can send copies to all your family members afterwards. But your final thoughts here on Hana Kobayashi. By the way, again, if news breaks on this over the weekend, I'm going to try to jump on it despite family obligations. So, Scott Duffy, the floor is yours. You get the final say.
I'll unmute myself. So, first and foremost, happy Thanksgiving. It's a pleasure being with this panel. And as always, I like to say I learned so much, right? A good investigator surrounds him or herself with people that have great ideas, and you're willing to put them all in play and ultimately follow the evidence. I just want to tell the family and friends that don't give up hope and know that law enforcement is doing their job. They really are. They are so overwhelmed with so many cases, but your case is always the case that is important to you, right? And they have every right to do whatever it is possible to bring light that nobody forgets. And ultimately, if Hannah is seen and she's wherever she is, that somebody will reach out and not move. Just get on your cell phone, 911, and say, hey, I have her, I think I have her, and let patrol or whoever do their job and be able to say yay or nay to that. That's what law enforcement's job is. And so it's worth the call. And ultimately to the family, that they will have some good, positive news, especially in light of Dad. So, shows like yours, Joel, continue to shed light on this and so many other cases, and continue to do your part in not forgetting yet another person who needs help.
Yep. And we're definitely gonna stay on it. Look at this. Baha Scott, someone mentioned that you should have this chinchilla in your calendar. Breaking news, COE whispered in my ear. Dr. Detective Troy Looney will only be allowed to have a holster on, and the geo profiler can only have his hat. Can be placed in other places, but that is a calendar that lies ahead. Someone's asking for a Speedo calendar. Fred and Ethel, they might ruin the mood. Look at this, sounds steamy from Scylla here. We get a little wild on STS, but I love having the new viewers. The community is going to continue to grow. Appreciate you being here. Today, obviously, is about Hana Kobayashi. Look how pretty she is. Here is another photo. You see her father visibly upset there, and now it makes a lot more sense because we see or heard what happened. You see him there looking quite distraught. This is horrible. And I'm also thinking about all the other people who are missing, who might not be, tall and attractive, who are not getting the same attention. But sadly, having been in the media, that's the way the world works sometimes. So there's plenty of other people missing. It is Thanksgiving tomorrow. I am very thankful to have all of you, to have the COE, my beautiful kids, my amazing mother who continues to teach me and yell at me simultaneously. We'll see you tomorrow at noon. Super casual, coming to you from our living room. If Carm can make it over in time, otherwise she'll be in her living room, and we'll just hang out. And then we're going to see so much going on next week. We've got sentencing with Sarah Boone. We've got a examining hearing going on with Suzanne Simpson and Brad Simpson, and obviously staying on this case. We will see you then. Love you, America.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to the best guests. Guests, stick around 1 second. We'll see you guys short. If there's breaking news, look for us. We'll be on Twitter's at Podcast STS, Instagram, Surviving the Survivor. Let's find Hannah Kobayashi.